What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another page of the playbook. This is Nate coming at you guys with another team in the 32 NFL offseasons in 32 days. Yesterday we talked about my Miami Dolphins. Today we are going to talk about the Minnesota Vikings. Before we get into today's video, guys, I just want to give a special shout out to today's sponsors, starting with Goldfine and Bowles, lawyers for the injured. Personal injury, workers' compensation, those are their two things, but any sort of legal advice, they're the people to call. Give them a phone call, 309-673-5144. Tell them we sent you, okay? And I'd also like to shout out SeatGeek for sponsoring today's video as well. Use promo code PlaybookSports on their website to get $20 off your first purchase of $30 or more. Let's get back to the video. So let's talk a little bit about last year, Vikings fans. Such a weird year, right? I was just kind of looking through it and all the highs and the lows. Holy roller coaster. Cousins was playing fantastic to start the year, and the team still couldn't win games. And then they started winning several in a row, and they clawed all the way back to 500 just to lose Kirk Cousins for the rest of the season. But then he turns things over to the Pastronaut, Josh Dobbs, who comes in and ignites the place. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, they're 7-6. They're fighting for a playoff spot just to lose out and finish 7-10, tied for last place in the division with the Bears. Just a bummer of a year, especially with how good they looked at times and just so many ups and downs. Just a really strange season for them. So they came into this offseason with a ton of questions, right? What are you going to do with Kirk Cousins? Can we extend Justin Jefferson and just get that done and just do it? What will the Vikings change? What can we change to get back to the playoffs and to be an actual playoff contender? So let's take a look at what they've done so far this offseason. We always start coaches, hired, fired, and it's always a good thing when I tell you no coaching changes as they keep together the trio of the head coach, offensive coordinator, and defensive coordinator. Particularly, I love their head coach. I think Kevin O'Connell's a fantastic head coach, and I really do like Brian Flores as a DC. He's a real shitter of a head coach, but as a defensive coordinator, man, the guy absolutely knows his stuff. So no coaching changes. Let's get into players lost in free agency, and we're going to start at the top with the man I mentioned earlier. Kirk Cousins was not brought back to be the QB in Minnesota. He ended up joining the Atlanta Falcons on a 4-year, $180 million deal, $45 million a year, which is a massive deal for an older quarterback in his mid-30s coming off of a torn Achilles. That's a big injury to bounce back from. I do think it seems like maybe the Vikings they had two options: pay the quarterback and hope that what we have is enough, which you've already kind of seen it probably isn't, or let the older quarterback go, reset at the quarterback position, save a ton of money a year, and throw a couple darts at the board and see if something sticks. Try somewhere else at QB. You've seen your ceiling probably, and it's not great. So they decided, we'll let Kirk go somewhere else. He can go to Atlanta, get all of his money, and maybe they can do something down there, but we're going to reset. I'm kind of neutral on this move. Obviously, they're worse in the immediate future, but like I said, they've seen their ceiling with Cousins in this roster, and it's probably a first-round playoff exit at best, so not a terrible idea. They also let longtime defensive end Danielle Hunter walk in free agency as well. This is a move I don't totally get. I thought Danielle Hunter that was older than he actually is. He's only 29 years old. That's pretty young. Honestly, that's light. I thought he was at least 31 or 32. He's only 29 years old. He's been super productive. He just had 26 sacks last year. He's got plenty of juice left in the tank. So if you're letting him go, obviously you've got to bring in someone better. You've got to bring in someone to help set that stage. You've got to get edge rushers in the Brian Flores defense. You need guys who can get after the passer. So let's talk about players that they have added. And to address that gap, they started in that pass rushing room, and they added former Texan Jonathan Grenard, 4-year, $76 million contract. He's only 27 years old, so pretty young still as well, coming off a career best 12.5 sacks for Houston. I'll be honest, I didn't think he was already 27. I thought he was younger than 27, and I thought Hunter was older, which made this move better in my mind. You get rid of the older guy, bring in a younger guy. It's only a 2-year difference. That's it. A 2-year difference. It makes much less sense to me. Danielle Hunter has been a Viking his entire career. He has been productive as hell his entire career. And you let him go and you bring in Jonathan Grenard, who, 2 years younger, but he's had one season of double-digit sacks. It was last year, a contract year. How often do we see players go crazy in contract years? All the time. All the time. Danielle Hunter was such a staple on that Vikings team, and letting him go and bringing in Grenard on a 4-year deal that pays him only $5 million less than Danielle Hunter seems silly to me. I would have preferred you try and capitalize on keeping Danielle Hunter in the building for at least 2 more seasons and pay him a couple extra million more a year. I don't know. Vikings fans, let me know in the comments down below if you are happy with going Grenard over Hunter, or if you're confused, or if you hate it. I'm curious on your guys' thoughts because, again, I don't watch every game. It's impossible. So let me know what you guys think about that move. They did also bring in a personal favorite of mine in edge rusher Andrew Van Ginkel. And while he is one of my favorite players, I love Van Ginkel. Absolutely loved him. I have to recognize his limitations, and I did in Miami as well, right? It was fun to watch. It was a fun thing to say, you've been Ginkled, you know. We'd get all excited about a Van Ginkel sack, but his sacks weren't created because he was better than the man across from him more often than not. His sacks were created, a lot of them were coverage sacks, and a lot of them were the quarterback is rolling away from Bradley Chubb or Jalen Phillips or Christian Wilkins or Zach Sealer, and Van Ginkel's just waiting to get him, right? Van Ginkel doesn't have outstanding athleticism. He doesn't have this huge frame. He's not any sort of star. And they're only paying him $10 million a year, right? So it's not a terrible contract. It's a little bit rich for my blood, a little bit too much for him. So you're going to pay Grenard and him for this upcoming season. That's, 19 for Grenard, and that's $29 million for your two edge rushers and those two guys. Not terrible, but I just don't think you're going to get $29 million worth of production out of those two. I just don't. So we'll see how that one goes. They also brought in linebacker Blake Cashman on a 3-year, $22 million deal. He'll be a starting interior linebacker for them day one. You guys know I like getting impact players who are going to play day one. But you have to hope, if he's going to be this guy, you have to hope he does something that he has never done, and that's play a full season. Go look at his career so far. He's played 16 games one time. Never played a full 17 season. He's just always been banged up. Solid linebacker when he's on the field, but when is he ever on the field? The guy's hurt all the time, so you're really hoping that he can kind of have a lucky year and be healthy all season. So I just don't know about this free agency class, to be honest with you guys. I think the word that pops in my head is underwhelming. They lost their starting quarterback, they lost their star edge rusher, and they brought in a couple of guys to try to replace the edge rusher's talent, and they brought in an interior linebacker who can hopefully play 12 to 13 games for them in a good year. I just don't know. And also, no, I am not going to sit here and talk to you guys about Sam Darnold. I'm just going to say this all the time. He's not a starting quarterback in the NFL. He's just not. Let's just move along. They need a quarterback. They still need a quarterback. So let's talk draft. Leading up to the 2024 NFL Draft, the Vikings pulled off a pretty great trade, in my opinion, with Houston getting pick number 23, so another first-round pick and pick 232 in the 7th round in exchange for their second-round pick number 42, pick number 188, which is a 6th-round pick, and a 2025 second. So 2 2s and a 6th for a 1 and a 7. I love that trade, just off the surface, just looking at pure numbers, especially in this kind of a draft class where there's a lot of talent in this draft class. Pick 23 is much more valuable than those picks, in my opinion. Didn't like the trade from Houston side, so I'm being consistent. Really like the trade from Minnesota. I thought for sure that Minnesota was going to use this extra ammo, this extra first, to move up and get a quarterback, but they didn't. They pretty much stood pat. Yes, they traded up from pick 11 to pick 10, but I think they just got tricked by the Jets. I don't know what happened there, why they felt the need to move up a spot, and maybe the Jets said, hey, someone's moving, you better jump on it, and they did. They took the bait, whatever. But they ended up trading up and taking quarterback J.J. McCarthy out of Michigan. I'll be honest, guys, I just don't see it with McCarthy, personally. I'm just not a biggest fan. You use the top 10 pick on a quarterback that has quite literally never been asked to carry his football team. Yeah, he's a winner. He's won a ton of football games. So has Stetson Bennett. It just doesn't move the needle for me. And no, he's not Stetson Bennett, but I'm just saying we can't use quarterback wins in college and high school as indicators for success in the NFL. You just can't do that. So you're taking a guy who has never had to put up the stats. All the quarterbacks taken in the first round have put up way better numbers than McCarthy. His defense and his running game absolutely carried him in college. And my concern is, I don't know if he can carry an offense, if he has to. What happens if the Vikings running game is stalling and they need to throw the ball and they've got to have a quarterback who can throw it for 300 yards and a couple of scores? Can he do that? Maybe. I've never seen it. So I can't say confidently, absolutely, the number 10 pick in the draft is a guy who can be seriously important to your team. I don't know if he can. I truthfully do not know if he can. It'll be interesting to find out. He is walking into a fantastic situation, a good offensive line, a top 5-6 tight end in the NFL, the best receiver in the NFL, and a very promising young receiver in Jordan Addison. They also added Aaron Jones, so he's got weapons galore and a great offensive line. If he can't thrive in this system, he's not going to thrive in the NFL, and he'll be a career backup. So clock's ticking, J.J. McCarthy. I am not a believer. Prove me wrong. I did really like their other first-round pick, moving up from pick 23 to pick number 17 and taking edge rusher Dallas Turner out of Alabama. A lot of people had him as defensive player number 1. Not just edge 1, defensive player number 1. I didn't have him as edge 1. I always liked Latu more than him, but that's just personal preference. Dallas Turner is the athletic player here. Latu was the more sound one. So I wasn't the highest on Dallas Turner because I like the technical soundness of Latu's game, but Dallas Turner has all the athleticism in the world. I mean, a 4.4s for the 40, an unbelievable vertical jump. You can see it on tape. The guy's very explosive. I just think he needs to put on a little bit of weight if he wants to be an everyday player. And surprisingly enough, they actually have him as not a starter at this moment in time. They've got him behind Van Ginkel and Grenard. I think he'll be a starter straight away. He'll have to start for them for sure, and he could be very solid. We'll see what he does. I like taking him at pick 17. This is about where I had him on my big board. Everyone's like, oh, he's a top 10 player. I was like, absolutely not. He is a middle of the first round guy, and he went at pick 17. I can hang my hat on that one. I was never big on him going at pick 8 at all. I didn't understand that even a little bit. Pick 17, absolutely can get behind that, so I really like the value with that pick. And then I really like their pick that they made in the fourth round. Not a ton of picks, right? They had 2 1s, a 4, and then a bunch later ones. And the ones that were later, I didn't find a ton of value. They were okay. Nothing special, but I did really like the pick of Kyrie Jackson, cornerback out of Oregon. He is such a Brian Flores corner. The long, lengthy corner, very athletic, more of a press man kind of guy. I mean, that is Brian Flores' type to a T. So I think he will absolutely play plenty for them. And he's a very solid corner, just has to work on technique a little bit. Good physicality, a willing tackler. Solid pick there in the fourth round for sure. I personally had him with a third-round grade, so getting him in the fourth is really good value. So the draft grade, since I don't love McCarthy as a prospect like some others might, my grade might be a little bit lower than others, and that's okay. It's okay to disagree. Totally fine. Let's talk about it in the comments. Let me know why McCarthy's the future of the Vikings and why I'm wrong about him. I would love to sit and talk about it. I would absolutely love to. So I think they got a really good future edge rusher in Dallas Turner. I think they've got a starting corner for sure in Kyrie Jackson at some point down the line. And like him or not, there's no way J.J. McCarthy doesn't at least get a couple seasons to be the starting quarterback, and maybe he develops. Maybe he becomes the guy. So if you can get 3 starters out of a draft, that's kind of the gold standard. And did they? They definitely got 2, and McCarthy will probably be a starter because it's not going to be Sam Darnold. It cannot be Sam Darnold. So I'm okay with that. I think it was a solid draft, and solid drafts on this channel get a B. So I'm going to give them a B for their draft class. Not a ton of picks, but some good picks sprinkled in there. Again, not a love it or hate it, but a like it sort of draft. So overall this offseason, I trust the Minnesota coaching staff. I really like the coaching staff that's been put together, and I think they can get the most out of their players. But man, going from Kirk Cousins and the numbers he was putting up, being in the MVP race to going to Sam Darnold / rookie J.J. McCarthy is a massive drop-off. That is a massive drop-off. I don't like that they let Danielle Hunter go and brought in Jonathan Grenard for just a few $million less. That felt like a foolish move to me. That felt like a step backwards. You've never seen Jonathan Grenard have 16 sacks before. He's only had 1 year of double-digit sack production. And he's only 2 years younger. It's not like he went way younger. So I just didn't understand that move at all. I do think that the Vikings front office is kind of all in on McCarthy working. So in a few years, this whole offseason is either going to look like a slam dunk. This was the springboard that led us to success. Or this is going to be the offseason where we're like, wow, we kind of had a good team. We could have maybe done something, but we didn't bring it back. We blew it up, and that was a huge mistake, and we're all fired. So it's going to be interesting to see. Solid draft, kind of a bummer of an offseason, honestly, when it comes to free agency additions. But I do like the draft enough to give this overall offseason a B-. So that's all I've got for you guys on the Minnesota Vikings 2024 offseason. And we will see you guys in tomorrow's entry in the 32 NFL teams in 32 days.